Breaking tonight, Canada now plans to recognize a Palestinian state.
The level of human suffering in Gaza is intolerable.
The historic announcement from the Prime Minister, the conditions and the push to end the suffering inside Gaza. We break down why now and what's next. Tsunami alerts and evacuations send millions along the Pacific fleeing to higher ground.
Certainly the anxiety level was very high. We had young children with us as well.
But are we ready for the next one? A judge slams the brakes on Ontario's plan to rip up Toronto bike lanes.
I know the people of Ontario believe that they elect parties to make decisions. They don't elect judges. And we'll be appealing it.
Why this legal fight isn't over.
From CBC News, this is The National with Asha Tomlinson.
Thank you for joining us. Adrian is away. Tonight, Mark Carney has confirmed Canada plans to recognize a Palestinian state in front of the United Nations General Assembly this September. Calling the suffering in Gaza intolerable, the Prime Minister stated this decision could no longer be delayed. Carney says Israel has failed at preventing a humanitarian disaster. But he also emphasized Hamas can play no role in a future general election. Rafi Boudjikanian now with Canada's proposal, the conditions within it, and why it's already facing criticism.
Prime Minister Mark Carney going where no Canadian government has gone before.
Canada intends to recognize the state of Palestine at the 80th session of the United Nations General Assembly in September 2025.
But that declaration comes with a number of conditions for the Palestinian Authority, which currently governs parts of the occupied West Bank, such as demilitarizing a future Palestinian state and democratic reforms, including a general election next year in which Hamas can have no role.
I'm not in any way, shape, minimizing the scale of that task.
Carney also delivered pointed criticism at Israel, stating thousands are on the brink of starvation in Gaza.
The level of human suffering in Gaza is intolerable.
That point echoed by aid groups and the UN, who warn mass starvation in Gaza is on the rise. Palestinian officials also point to widespread hunger.
The Palestinian people have been living hell for 2 years. They know what they want. They need the opportunity to actually build their own state. And for us, the most important part right now is to end the genocide.
Israel denies there is starvation in Gaza, says it has no faith in the Palestinian Authority as a partner for peace, and insists Canada is rewarding Hamas.
Sometimes you have to be bold, but being bold at the expense of Israeli families, of Israel's security, that is not something that is appreciated by Israel.
The onus in Canada's preconditions leans a lot harder on Palestinians, says this observer.
I was struck by the one-sidedness of the requirements of that a Palestinian state be demilitarized and no Hamas, but no corresponding requirement for Israel to get rid of or ban or limit the political activity of its leading far right-wing parties.
Other conditions for this recognition: Hamas must release all remaining hostages, and it all has to be part of a two-state solution.
And Rafi, Canada's following 2 other G7 nations when it comes to recognizing Palestinian statehood.
Prime Minister Carney spoke to his British counterpart as well as the French president this week. Ottawa's approach does differ from its 2 allies. France says it will recognize a Palestinian state in September without any preconditions, while the UK is saying it will go ahead unless Israel meets its requests, including a ceasefire and letting more aid in.
Rafi Boudjikanian in Ottawa, thank you. Mark Carney is also being pressed about whether his team can reach a deal with the U.S. before a Friday deadline to avoid a new 35% tariff. Ashley Burke now with the state of the negotiation and why the Prime Minister appears to be tempering expectations.
Another day facing the same questions. Another day with no deal.
As you know, we're seeking the best deal for Canadians. We have not yet reached that deal. Negotiations will continue until we do.
The Prime Minister says his team is back in Washington trying to break through. but gave the clearest indication yet he might not land a deal by Donald Trump's deadline.
These are complex, they're comprehensive, they're constructive negotiations with the Americans are ongoing. It's possible that they may not conclude by the 1st of August.
Trump's economic advisor more optimistic than the president last week.
I think that there's still hope for progress, and if the progress isn't what the president wants, then the deadline will kick in August.
Without a deal, Trump is threatening 35% tariffs.
August 1st is a very big day for this country because money is going to pour into the United States like we've never seen before.
So far, Trump's announced deals with the UK, European Union, and countries in Asia. The latest tonight with South Korea. All agreements include tariffs.
Canada is looking increasingly on the outside, and therefore this increases pressure again, as if we don't have enough, to come to some sort of an agreement that will very likely include tariffs.
7 premiers sent a letter to Carney calling for a deal to include softwood lumber.
We just want to make sure it's on the radar of the Prime Minister and that it's not just assumed, well, this has been a long time issue and we're not going to be able to resolve it.
The steel industry wants relief too. It's struggling with 50% tariffs and says it's disturbing to see other countries' deals.
For example, both the EU and Japan have maintained the 50% tariffs on steel. Obviously, for the Canadian steel industry, this would be a disaster. So we would not consider that a good deal for Canada in any way.
CBC News asked Carney if a deal is possible without tariffs on the sector. He says there's give and take when making a broader deal, but sectors like aluminum and steel that Trump's decided are strategically important all have tariffs, lowering expectations that he might be able to get them all off.
And Ashley, Trump's hitting another sector with new tariffs tonight, right?
Yeah, Asha. Trump ordered 50% tariffs on semi-finished copper products starting Friday. It's less sweeping than what Trump originally threatened, but still will apply to copper pipes and wiring. And the U.S. president also made it clear his August 1st deadline isn't budging. But Trump is famously known for changing his mind at the last minute.
All right, Ashley Burke in Ottawa, thanks. Uncertainty over the trade war is part of the reason why the Bank of Canada says it is holding its key interest rate at 2.75%.
There is a sense that U.S. policy may well remain unpredictable. There is a sense that trust is not, it's going to be hard to restore trust. So yes, I think some level of uncertainty will continue.
This is the third straight time the central bank has held rates, each time highlighting concerns about tariffs. The current policy comes after 7 consecutive cuts dating back to June of 2024. The next rate announcement will come on September 17th. Some U.S. lawmakers are speaking out tonight, saying it is time to get rid of the tariffs on Canada in order to end Canadian boycotts on American booze. Karen Paul shows us why.
They're popping corks and pouring shots.
Enjoy that.
But it's not just a social event. Republican and Democratic senators sharing the stage, trying to de-escalate the trade war with Canada.
It's not just the tariffs increasing the cost. There are store owners just taking Kentucky bourbon off the shelves out of pure patriotism.
The retaliation issues end up being very, very painful.
Industry groups say the sale of U.S. spirits in Canada fell by more than 66% between March and April. Hardest hit? Bourbon, whiskey, and wine.
That's Camp Chardonnay. This is a wine, one of our kind of main exports to Canada.
This California vintner hasn't sold anything to Canada for months.
Let's get along. Let's get business back to where it was. I think everybody wants that.
Even think about it.
It all began when U.S. President Donald Trump started making comments like this.
I say Canada should be our 51st state. There's no tariffs, no nothing.
Most premiers pulled U.S. liquor off government store shelves in response to Trump's tariffs.
The good news about this is that the Canadian booze is way better than the American stuff.
Alberta and Saskatchewan have since lifted their bans, but the others remain. Now, months later, these senators want an end to the tariffs and the boycotts.
I've yet to come across a businessman or woman who comes and says, oh, I love the tariffs. It's the opposite.
Just get rid of the Canadian tariffs. Just get rid of them. So this is a Virginia producer.
With the deadline looming for a new Canada-U.S. trade agreement, American producers say they don't want to be forgotten.
When we lose market, it's very difficult to get it back. And then these limitations on trade are just making it a little bit more difficult for us.
The U.S. wine and liquor industry is facing real economic pain with lost shelf space and consumer loyalty. Pressure from Republican states like Kentucky and Tennessee could help Canada at the negotiating table. Karen Pauls, CBC News, Washington.
Several countries remain under tsunami threat tonight after that huge earthquake off Russia. But for millions around the Pacific Rim who mobilized to higher ground, there is relief. Jessica Chung now with how it all unfolded and why it could have been so much worse.
Tsunami sirens in Japan and in Hawaii, warning of waves that could hit shores after an 8.8 magnitude earthquake rocked Russia's far eastern coast, the 6th largest in recorded history. Doctors and nurses performing surgery at a hospital there, weathering the trembles of the quake. It prompted tsunami alerts stretching around the Pacific Rim in Russia, Japan, Hawaii, the west coast of the U.S. and Canada, and extended as far as Chile, Colombia, and New Zealand. Evacuation orders had people scrambling to higher ground, including some Canadians on holiday.
The anxiety level was very high. We had young children with us as well, and they were expressing concern. You can imagine when you're hearing reports of, about destruction and potential damage.
But the damage some feared never arrived. Experts say a number of factors contribute to how destructive a tsunami can be.
It's that combination of both the earthquake source and the local situation. Which direction is your bay pointing, for example, and how quickly does the water become deep?
Another expert says this should be a lesson for Canada's west coast, preparing for the long-predicted earthquake known as the Big One.
What we need to do now is to make sure that some of these smaller communities that maybe don't have the resources of, say, a Tofino, Ucluelet, Victoria, to make sure that they have enough education and signage so that people know what to do when the ground shakes intensely.
Rattled but relieved, as this quake put the preparedness of millions to the test. Jessica Chung, CBC News, Vancouver.
Toronto police are offering a $50,000 reward tonight in hopes of solving a missing person case from 40 years ago.
So we're just looking for that one tip. We know that there's people in the community with that information.
On this day back in 1985, 8-year-old Nicole Moran left her apartment to meet a friend in the lobby and was never seen again, despite one of the largest searches in Toronto police history. Police say the case can still be solved and showed what Moran might look like now. The man accused of killing his 9-year-old daughter from Montreal while on a road trip in upstate New York has been denied bail. Luciano Fratellin, charged with second-degree murder and concealment of a corpse. Police say earlier this month he fabricated a story of his daughter Melina's abduction, but her body was later found in a pond. Fratellin pleaded not guilty, and his trial is set for next year. A judge has blocked the Ontario government's controversial plans to rip up several bike lanes in Toronto, calling the move unconstitutional. But as Katie Nicholson tells us, the province is promising to double down.
These busy downtown bike lanes granted a reprieve by the Superior Court, a victory for city cyclists.
We're just all over the moon.
A slapdown for the Ontario government, which wanted 19 kilometers of bike lanes along Toronto's 3 busiest corridors ripped out, arguing it would help solve the city's infamous traffic woes. A Superior Court judge accused the province of providing weak anecdotal evidence and found that the government's action would be in breach of the Charter of Rights and Freedoms, ruling the lane removals would put people at an increased risk of harm and death, and even stuck the province with a $200,000 bill. The Premier intends to fight it.
I believe, and I know the people of Ontario believe, that they elect parties to make decisions. They don't elect judges, and we'll be appealing it.
Good, say those against bike lanes.
I really think the provincial government ran on this issue and was elected for it. I hope they try to speed the process up a bit. I mean, Toronto was suffering. I believe it's in decline because congestion is one of the main reasons.
But one expert witness in the case says removing bike lanes won't help.
It is solidly proven in Toronto, around the world, this is settled scientific and engineering fact, that bike lanes decrease congestion, increasing car lanes increases congestion. Even the province's own experts have told them that.
The research is one thing, but the use of a charter argument in this case cuts new ground, says this cycling lawyer.
My hope is that cycling advocates across the country, especially in Halifax and in Alberta, learn from what Cycle Toronto's done here and reaches out.
In fact, the arguments in this decision already being closely read by advocates in Alberta.
I think they would form a part of any discussion that we have.
Not a bike path, but a legal pathway for others. Katie Nicholson, CBC News, Toronto.
Canada's biggest exhibition says it is seeing a record number of people apply for jobs at this year's fair. Thousands turned out today for a job fair in Toronto, and as Lisa Shing shows us, many young people are still trying to find that summer job.
The struggle to find work is felt acutely at this job fair.
I went to an interview yesterday, they said no. I've been to like 10 interviews this summer alone. I can't get a job.
Well, looking at like movies and stuff, you just go in and get a job. It's more like they were complaining about having a job, but now it's all I want.
The Canadian National Exhibition says it received a record 54,000 applications.
I see cashier here at McDonald's.
Job seekers here hope to be one of the 5,000 lucky enough to snag a seasonal position, typically filled by young people.
No one wants to accept young people. So it's pretty hard to find. Yeah, it's pretty hard to find a job nowadays.
Indeed, it's a tough labor market for them. Apart from the pandemic, people between the ages of 15 and 24 are facing the highest unemployment rate in 15 years, currently hovering around 14% nationwide.
The people that are struggling are what we call the new labor market entrants, people who are entering the labor market to try and find a job. For them, it's really hard. It's not people are losing their jobs, it's that it's harder to get into jobs.
Experts say there's been a kind of whiplash in the job market in the last few years. Post-pandemic, the economy regained jobs it lost. Now there's an inflation crisis, and the uncertainty amidst a trade war with the U.S. means companies are slower to hire and pickier.
Every place asks for experience, but how are you supposed to get experience if you don't have any yet?
This stress, along with other worries about housing costs, climate change, is leading to an increase in mental health issues. That disproportionately affects racialized youth, says this professor.
Often it is the fact that these things that compromise health and well-being, like unemployment or racism, these things tend to hang together.
I did get a job, I'm so happy.
A moment of celebration for at least some in this crowd. Lisa Shing, CBC News, Toronto.
Pierre Poilievre hopes to win an Alberta by-election and return to the House of Commons, but it may not be as easy as he would like.
Monsieur Poilievre is too busy with his own personal ambitions to give a rat's backside about us.
Why some voters and candidates are expressing frustration. Next. She says she doesn't drink, but was still penalized when she wasn't able to blow a breathalyzer test.
Often people have lung capacity issues, whether exhaling or inhaling.
Why some say it happens more often than you think. And later, traded from one side of the diamond to the other.
Dominguez starts his post-Orioles career, striking out the Orioles Cowser.
The Oriole who became a Blue Jay in the middle of a doubleheader. We're back in 2. Fire has destroyed a historic backdrop in the famous Quidi Vidi neighborhood in St. John's. Flames tore through 2 colorful fishing stages overnight in an area only accessible by boat. Locals jumped in to help using hoses and buckets. They were able to prevent the destruction of a 3rd stage. Investigators are still trying to figure out the cause. In just weeks now, voters in Alberta will decide whether Pierre Poilievre will be heading back to the House of Commons. The Conservative leader is running in a by-election in what is traditionally a stronghold for the party. But as Julia Wong tells us, he's facing questions about why he's running in a riding where he doesn't live.
Thanks for coming out. Really appreciate you guys coming out.
Outside, a warm reception for Pierre Poilievre.
But inside, other by-election candidates were frosty.
I firmly believe that Monsieur Poilievre is too busy with his own personal ambitions to give a rat's backside about us.
This was a chance for voters to hear directly from Poilievre and 9 others who are hoping to beat the Conservative leader who lost his Ottawa seat in April. His opponents are crying foul.
I believe first and foremost, you have to be able to live in the riding to be able to represent it.
He is treating us like we're the easiest riding in the country, and it's insulting.
Poilievre says he's been meeting people from across the riding. He was born in Alberta and argues there could be an upside to having a party leader as MP.
That leader can bring a very powerful megaphone to the local issues of the community.
This riding is a consistent Conservative stronghold. Since it was created in 2015, the Conservative candidate has always won with more than 70% of the vote. In the biggest city in the riding, voters are split.
I think if he gets a job, I'm not saying he'll do a bad job. I think it would have been nicer to see somebody from around the region.
You know, he kind of got railroaded down east, and I would like to see him get in here because something has to be done to make this country better.
Local representation matters, but it may not matter enough to change the outcome, says this expert.
I think a lot of them will still plug their nose and vote for Pierre Poilievre because they know what it means for the Conservative Party. Because, again, they lean Conservative, and maybe even more so, they lean anti-Liberal.
214 candidates are confirmed in this by-election, many of them part of a push for electoral reform. Voters go to the polls August 18th. Julia Wong, CBC News, Camrose, Alberta.
Breathalyzers are a common police tool for catching drunk drivers, but not everyone can use them.
I was shaking, my heart was pounding. I couldn't figure out why I couldn't make this test work.
Why one Calgary woman says she was punished after failing to blow a sample. Plus, Mark Carney says Canada will recognize a Palestinian state at the UN this fall.
Canada has long been committed to a two-state solution.
But what does it actually mean for the current conflict? We'll break that down. And as the deadline for a trade deal with the U.S. approaches, the effects of Trump's trade war have already devastated some businesses.
I think about how are we going to be able to keep the business open.
The toll it's taken on duty-free stores. The National breaks down the stories shaping our world next. Thousands lined the streets of Birmingham, England to pay tribute to the late Ozzy Osbourne during the rocker's hometown funeral procession. His wife Sharon and 2 of his children laid flowers at a memorial. The Black Sabbath frontman died last week at age 76. A Calgary woman says she's being unfairly punished after failing to complete a breathalyzer test. She says it's not that she wouldn't do it, but that she couldn't. Paula Duhatchek now with why some experts say her story isn't unique.
These days, Pam Lacusta has to do her errands on 2 wheels. She says she doesn't drink alcohol, but in April, she was stopped by police and given a breathalyzer test. She tried 30 times to give a sample and says she couldn't.
I was shaking, my heart was pounding. I couldn't figure out why I couldn't make this test work.
Lacusta was penalized for failing to provide a proper breath sample, a violation that carries the same consequences as driving under the influence.
I complied. I did comply. I did do it, but I was unable to do it, if that makes any sense to people.
It's something that we see in our business quite regularly.
Some lawyers and paralegals say it's common for people to struggle giving roadside breath samples.
Often people are not used to being in the police presence. Often people have lung capacity issues, whether exhaling or inhaling.
Lacusta later found out she had 2 suspected rib fractures, but not in time to include that information in an appeal, which was denied by a provincial adjudicator. One UK researcher suggests even without a particular medical condition, these tests can pose a challenge.
There is a small but significant subset of people who
just don't have enough puff to be able to operate the machine successfully.
He believes blood or urine tests should be more commonly offered to people who genuinely try and fail to give a sample. A spokesperson for Calgary Police said if someone believes there's a medical reason they can't complete the test, they should tell the officer at the scene. In a statement, the province said officers may ask for blood or urine samples if certain legal requirements are met. Lacusta says she wasn't given that option. She still hopes to fight the penalty and have her clean driving record restored. Paula Duhacek, CBC News, Calgary.
Now it's time to break down the stories shaping our world. Why family-run duty-free shops are bordering on failure.
We feel like we're hostages in economic warfare right now.
But first, the deadly hunger in Gaza drives a push to recognize Palestine as a state, and Canada's on board.
Who cannot be part of that process? Hamas.
What to watch for as countries draw lines in the sand, and what needs to be done right now to save lives. What Gaza endures tonight is being called the worst-case scenario of famine. Ashley Fraser breaks down how it started with the tight control of aid distribution.
The worst-case scenario of famine is unfolding in Gaza. That's a warning from the IPC, a global hunger monitor. They say failure to act now could result in widespread death. Gaza health authorities say 154 people, including 89 children, have died from hunger-related causes, most of them in the last few weeks. But to understand today, let's go back to March of this year. Israel blocked the entry of all humanitarian aid into Gaza after a shaky ceasefire expired and an extension was being negotiated. That was a move intended to pressure Hamas into releasing more hostages. By the end of March, there were warnings from the World Food Programme that hundreds of thousands of Palestinians were at risk of severe hunger and malnutrition. But the blockade continued until May. That same month, Israel announced a new controversial aid distribution organization backed by the U.S. and Israel, the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation. The GHF replaced the UN-led system for distributing aid in Gaza. Israel said the new system would keep Hamas fighters from diverting aid, an often repeated, unproven claim. The 4 GHF aid distribution sites, down from the previous system's 400, are located in Israeli militarized zones, and security is provided by private U.S. contractors. However, the GHF has been widely criticized for failing to effectively deliver aid to Palestinians. Many aid groups, including the UN, refuse to cooperate with the GHF because they say it contradicts humanitarian principles. The UN Human Rights Office says more than 1,000 Palestinians have been killed by Israeli forces while trying to get food, mostly near sites run by the GHF. This is refuted by Israel. Last week, more than 100 humanitarian organizations pressed for governments to take action. They urged them to demand a ceasefire, saying mass starvation is spreading across Gaza. The UN and other aid providers have said they are continuing to try to distribute aid in Gaza, but they said they are reliant on Israeli authorities to allow them to deliver more aid. On Sunday, Israel began what they say will be a daily pause in fighting to allow a minimal amount of aid into Gaza. But aid workers say it's not enough.
We are not yet getting the volumes of food and other relief supplies that we need inside Gaza.
So what does Israel say about the scenes of starvation?
There is no policy of starvation in Gaza, and there is no starvation in Gaza.
An Israeli army spokesperson told NPR most of the images of starvation in Gaza are fake and distributed by Hamas. Meanwhile, Donald Trump said,
"That's real starvation stuff. I see it. And you can't fake that."
He also mentioned the U.S. will work with Israel to run new food distribution centers in Gaza, but provided few details. The UK government has now announced that it will recognize a Palestinian state in September unless Israel takes
substantive steps to end the appalling situation in Gaza.
A move Israel says would amount to a reward for Hamas militants. Meanwhile, aid groups continue to warn that if more food doesn't flood Gaza in the next few days, more deaths from starvation are imminent.
Danny Glenwright is here from Save the Children, which advocates for kids and delivers aid. Thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me.
Danny, so you have people on the ground in Gaza. What are they telling you about the current situation?
Well, I think, as was said, it's now the worst case scenario that we've been predicting for 21 months. We are seeing children dying of starvation before our eyes. We are seeing famine spiraling across the Gaza Strip. Our clinics are packed. We have 200 to 300 people reporting to our clinics every day now, and every single child that's showing up is malnourished. We've seen a 10-fold increase in malnourishment. And we're seeing their parents, their skin and bones. We're seeing mothers who are breastfeeding showing up and saying, I can't produce milk, please give me formula. And in some cases, these mothers are saying, can I take formula with me? Because if I die, I want somebody to still be able to feed my baby. And children are increasingly saying to our staff, all I wish for is to die, because at least in heaven there will be food and water. And a colleague the other day said, you know, I've never seen this before in all my years working in this sector, but our local staff, most of our staff in Gaza are local, they're treating their children in our clinics now because they can't access food. And that's how bad it is.
I'm sure you know that all eyes internationally are on Gaza. What would you like to see from the international community?
What we're seeing is a moral, legal, and political profound failure right now. We're seeing a complicity in the atrocities that I've described. And I've called on our government, I've called on Prime Minister Carney and on Foreign Minister and on Canada needs to do more, or else we will be aligned to these atrocities. And history will remember what we did in this moment and what we failed to do in this moment. Canada needs to push for a definitive ceasefire. We need to pull those diplomatic and the economic levers, which we have pulled much faster in other international crises. We have obligations internationally to uphold international law, to prevent atrocities, and to prevent civilian deaths. And so far, we've done a lot of hand-wringing, a lot of finger-wagging as this outrage and this iniquity continues across Gaza. And I'm worried that it's almost too late now. We are at a tipping point.
Danny Glenwright from Save the Children, thank you.
Thank you.
The suffering in Gaza is touching off a landslide of reaction from world leaders, including Canada. The Prime Minister says Canada will recognize a Palestinian state in the fall. Janice Stein is founding director of the Munk School of Global Affairs and Public Policy, and she's joining us tonight to share some insight. Janice, what should we make of Carney's announcement today?
It is clearly a response to the horror that everybody has seen growing over the last several weeks and a fierce sense that something must be done. What is important, though, is to note the conditions that Carney attached. There must be significant structural reform of the Palestinian Authority, and equally important, he has to commit President Abbas to hold elections in 2026. So this is a conditional commitment.
And so, okay, there are a lot of conditions, but do you think the recognition will have an effect on the current conflict in Gaza?
It will not have an immediate impact, but it is a strong signal to Israel and to Hamas that the status quo cannot be allowed to continue and that patience with both sides is utterly exhausted.
Yesterday, I'm sure you know, Arab states, including Qatar, Egypt, Saudi Arabia, released that statement, right, calling on Hamas to disarm and leave Gaza. How significant is that?
Well, that is a huge change. This is really the first time they have gone on record, and a large group of Arab states, Turkey as well, Saudi Arabia, they have gone on record as insisting that Hamas leave Gaza. This is the first time. And beyond that, they have called on the international community with strong evidence that there is Arab support for this, for a peacekeeping force that will go in until a more permanent relationship and a reformed Palestinian Authority can take over. So big, big change, as well as calling for full Israeli withdrawal from Gaza, an immediate increase in humanitarian aid.
You know, diplomatically, I know this is a hefty question, but what are the risks in pushing for a two-state solution at this time?
There are always risks because there's a long road ahead with many pitfalls. Each of these commitments is conditional. Each party has to meet these conditions. There are big obstacles on all sides. But I think the importance here is the political signal that enough is enough and beyond, and that there is zero tolerance now for any party that is going to obstruct, first of all, humanitarian aid to starving Palestinians, and beyond that, a political settlement. There is no tolerance for this war.
Janice Stein is founding director of the Munk School of Global Affairs and Public Policy. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Coming up, Friday is the deadline for Canada to reach a deal with the U.S. on tariffs, but the pain is already being felt by many businesses.
I'm just hoping that they can come to some kind of resolution so I actually have a job.
The impact on duty-free stores, next. How the U.S. trade war is choking off business for duty-free shops.
If there's no customers, there's no job.
The pain of seeing your family business on the brink.
What am I going to do?
And all because of something you can't control. Nick Purdon met some of the people whose livelihood is on the line back in the spring. Here's another look at why they feel so helpless.
You know, having to put my own money into the company to keep the lights on, pay my staff. Do I continue to throw good money at potentially bad money?
There's a lot of tension. There's a lot of apprehension when crossing the border now. It's not the same feeling that people used to have. That's the sad part of all this.
Since the United States started a trade war against Canada, there's a new reality at the border. Crossings are down more than 20%, or almost 1 million people a month. So what if your business depends 100% on people crossing the border? Abe Taktak, the owner of the duty-free shop in Windsor, Ontario, is worried.
I think about how are we going to be able to keep the business open, keep people employed, and keep the lights on. We've seen a double-digit decline in sales and revenue.
Abe's store is a family-run business. And that's actually true of all 32 land border duty-free shops across the country. Abe's parents opened this store almost 40 years ago, the first one in Ontario. It was a big event at the time. There were speeches, even the mayor came.
When my parents first opened this store, business was not easy. It took them a long time to grow this business. They had everything on the line. You know, it was a tough time for us as a family.
The family stuck with it, expanded the store, and it became successful.
How long is this going to take you to do?
Probably till the end of the day.
Now that Abe is in charge and his family's business is in crisis, you can imagine how much stress he's under.
The stakes are huge. I mean, from a financial perspective, from where I'm going to live in the future, what am I going to do? You don't want to be the one at the helm with the challenge that actually is the final call, and that's something that I would hate to have to do.
Anything that comes up as a discrepancy, we check.
Longtime employee Wolf Weinberg is worried too.
What does this place mean to you, this store?
It's a big part of my life. I've been here for 17 years. I've worked everything from the midnight shift to the day shift to now running the warehouse and the inventory. That's my life now. If there's no customers and there's nobody coming in to buy, there's no job.
What would that mean for you?
It would be crushing. It's 17 years of my life. I just can't pick up and find something else.
It's supposed to be $4.95 though, right?
For now, Abe is committed to paying his staff and keeping the shop open.
Okay, we'll put them on. We'll start them off at 50% off and see how they go.
Yeah. And this is the struggle for duty-free shops across the country. This is Osuyus, British Columbia, the southern end of the Okanagan Valley. Across the water there, Washington State. Cam Bissonnette owns the duty-free shop on the border here. He says he never saw this coming, and he's been hit harder than maybe anyone in the country. Cam's business is down more than 80%. There's almost no traffic. And the thing is, if people don't cross, he can't make money.
You have to walk through my front door, make the purchase, and then go directly to the United States. So, I mean, I can't sell things online, of course. I can't sell to different markets. Obviously, I can't sell back into Canada because everything is tax and duty free. We feel like we're hostages in economic warfare right now, and there's very little we can do.
What's striking is what you say, that you can't pivot.
We cannot pivot, yeah. We absolutely cannot pivot.
Cam has already cut the store's hours. He used to employ 15 people. Only 3 remain. And he says he's poured more than $100,000 into the store to keep it afloat.
I've, built my identity around this business. It's such a strong part of the fabric of my life.
Including a dream that he might one day work here with his kids.
I had some wonderful years here, building the business. I had a fantastic working relationship with my father. I'm not going to have that same working relationship in this business with either of my children.
Do you think you're going to have to close?
I hate to think about that. Shit. You just spend a lot of time and energy in it. You're trying to do the best you can. I hate to think that after 30 years of doing this, that it would just one day I walk up and turn the key on it and never walk back again.
Behind all the numbers and the political announcements, this is how the trade war affects people. Back in Windsor, Ontario, Trump's threat to annex Canada and the animosity that it's created is the main reason Abe Taktak's parking lot is empty.
Being in Windsor and Detroit, we used to call ourselves, and still do call ourselves, many do, a two-nation destination. We're sister cities. And now the idea of crossing the border isn't something that people are looking forward to as much anymore. When you change people's emotional connection and emotional decision-making, I hope that eventually this will pass, but I fear that this is going to be something that's going to stick around for a lot longer.
Since we first aired that story back in May, Canadian travel to the U.S. across land borders has dropped even more. It's now down 33% compared to last year. Next, a Major League Baseball pitcher gets traded during a doubleheader.
It's always really interesting to see people just change teams in the same place on the same day.
The unusual timing of his switch to the Blue Jays in our moment. On the top left, you can see Sir Anthony Dominguez, the new relief pitcher for the Toronto Blue Jays, sitting above his former teammates on the Baltimore Orioles on the same day he was traded. He made the switch during a doubleheader between the two teams, walking from one clubhouse to the next. And tonight, his Major League shakeup makes our moment.
Try to come in the park, try to do my best to help the Orioles win. And right now, I'm going to do the same with the Blue Jays.
We are closing in on baseball's trade deadline, and the first move that the Blue Jays made was to trade for Sir Anthony Dominguez, because Baltimore's in last place. They're selling. The Blue Jays are in first place. They're buying. They just happened to be playing against each other. So he was in uniform with the Orioles for the first game of the doubleheader on Tuesday, and he pitched for the Blue Jays in the second game.
Throws it again, and the Orioles know that feeling. Dominguez starts his post-Orioles career, striking out the Orioles' Cowser on the splitter.
Usually when you get traded, there's travel arrangements that need to be made. You got to go hop on a plane and find your team in the next city. You don't just have to walk 30 yards between a couple of clubhouses in a tunnel underneath. But that was what Dominguez got to do, is say goodbye to his old friends and hello to his new ones. It's always really interesting to see people just change teams in the same place on the same day.
I think that's wild. So apparently a trade like that isn't unprecedented, but we certainly don't see it happen every day. I have so many questions though, like how do they know what size uniform to order? Did he pack some of his stuff? Do they have a place for him to stay? Anyway, welcome to Toronto, Sir Anthony. Hope you stick around for a while. From all of us at The National, thank you for being with us. You can watch anywhere, anytime on the free CBC News app and subscribe to The National's YouTube channel. I'm Asha Tomlinson. Take care.